Welcome, friends. Good evening. I'm Bridget Moix, General Secretary of FCNL, and I'm so very glad to be with you this evening. As I was watching the names and introductions scroll through in the chat, I was thinking about a great people being gathered to do the work that we're called to do, that our faith calls us to put into action. So thank you for being here and for being part of this gathering. What a time to be called to do the work of advocacy in Washington. I have to say it is hard to even keep up with everything that is happening. And so I'm glad that tonight we have a program where we can together try to make sense of some of the key things that are happening in Congress and what we can do about them together. We are in the midst of a government shutdown. Tomorrow, the federal employees will miss their first paycheck in this shutdown, and it is poised to harm millions across the country. We are facing healthcare subsidies potentially skyrocketing for families across the country. We are on the brink and have seen a ceasefire deal in Gaza that we hope might bring some relief and a possibility for justice and peace. And we even had a vote just last night in the Senate on Congress's war powers and their constitutional powers to authorize war. So we have a lot to talk about, friends, and we're glad that you're here. I have mentioned before on some of these calls that I enjoy watching, as I walk my dog, the signs around my neighborhood, and they've been changing. There are new signs every day. There's a sign that really speaks to me right now that simply says, none of this is normal. None of what we are experiencing is normal. And we need Congress to step up at this time to do its job and push back as the voice of the people against so many threats to the world that we seek. A world free of war and the threat of war. A world with justice and equity for all, where everyone's potential may be fulfilled, and where our earth can be restored. So, what can we do in this moment together? We know that as people of faith, we are called to persist with faith and hope, with love for all our neighbors, no exception, no matter the challenges that we are facing. Tonight, I am very excited that we have some wonderful guests to speak with us about how we can keep persisting at this time. We will be hearing from members of the faith community who are doing organizing in their own areas around the country and what we can do together. We will hear about Congress's role at this critical time and the vote just last night about the war authorization. And we will talk about the power of the purse and the critical role that Congress must play in standing up against the threats that this current Trump administration is making to those fundamental constitutional powers. We will have a video from a special guest, a member of Congress, so stay tuned for that later on. And of course, because we are here not just to learn together and take stock of the moment that we're in, but to put our faith into action, we will hear what we can do next and what our next steps are in this advocacy, this faithful advocacy in a time of crisis. Before we get started, I just want to review a few tech reminders. At this point, we have 140 and still counting people on the line. Live captioning should be available to everyone if you're joining on the computer or by tablet, so look for that if you'd like. And so that we can all focus tonight, we are going to be closing the chat. After we've had these introductions, we're going to close the chat so that we can really hear and listen together. You can still chat FCNL panelists and hosts if you need help. And we do have the questions box, so please do put your questions into that box, and we will try to answer them as we go along. Now, I'm very happy to hand things over to my colleague, Stephen Donahoe, FCNL's Head of Advancement, who will introduce a few faithful advocates to share their stories. Stephen, over to you.
Thank you, Bridget, and thank you again to everyone joining us tonight. We know that there are many calls, webinars, meetings, and activities happening right now for good reason. There's a lot going on. But this is a moment we all need to speak up and turn out for the values that we hold. Since FCNL's founding in 1943, we've played an outsized role in the faithful advocacy community here in DC. But Quakers alone cannot bring about the world we seek. We are more effective advocates and allies when we build bridges and work in partnership. In recent years, we've been doing more intentional work strengthening relationships across faith traditions locally. And you all have responded. You're excited about this, which is wonderful. Grassroots advocates, especially advocacy team members, have been building relationships with faith leaders and the communities that they lead. And the impact has been really powerful. This work will continue in the months and years ahead under the auspices of our strategic plan, and we hope you will invite members of your congregations to become partners with FCNL and our grassroots advocates across the country. Truly, we are stronger together. So now I'm excited to introduce 3 advocates from different faith traditions to share with us about the importance of faithful voices in advocacy right now. So first, please welcome Reverend Diana Gibson from California. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak. It's good to see everyone, or the ones I can see. I'm Diana Gibson. I am a Presbyterian minister in Palo Alto, just south of San Francisco in California. And the role I'm going to talk about is my role as convener of a group called Multi-Faith Voices for Peace and Justice. Do I need to turn up my volume? Okay. So I'm convener of this group called Multi-Faith Voices for Peace and Justice, totally grassroots, all volunteer. In November of this past year, our congressional district elected a new congressperson, and prompted by FCNL, we made an appointment with him right away to build mutual relationships right from the start. We gathered about 20 local faith leaders, most of them known to us, some newish. We had Buddhist, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Unitarian Universalists, and Quakers. So we had a good religious diversity. We had some racial ethnic diversity, although we were predominantly white and definitely predominantly older. I was in charge of planning and moderating it, and I turned to Justin, who was awesome in helping me work out a plan, and I had it all scripted. I knew what we were doing, who was going to say what when, and I admit that's kind of how I like things. So we were coming to the end of our time, and one of our group was speaking, and the staff member for our congressman, it was Sam Liccardo, leaned over and said, he needs to be the last speaker. And I said, okay, because I'm a good girl. But as he finished speaking, a young Black evangelical Christian pastor raised her hand. So, contrary to what he told me, I called on her. Seemed obvious. And she said something like, Congressman Liccardo, we know that you're facing a lot of challenging and hard times. And is it okay if we keep you in our prayers? And that sounded nice, good last comment. And he said, of course. And then a Muslim woman said, let's pray now. This was not in my script, okay? But I took a breath and I said, okay. And I invited the Christian woman who had suggested it to offer a prayer from her tradition, the Muslim woman to offer a prayer from her tradition, a rabbi who was there to offer a prayer from Judaism, and then the Buddhist who was there to offer a prayer as well. And we stood up and we surrounded the congressperson. And the Christian woman offered a very heartfelt prayer. The Muslim woman then recited in Arabic, and then English. The rabbi offered a prayer in Hebrew and then English. And the Buddhist chanted in Japanese. She comes from a Japanese Buddhist tradition, and then translated it English. And the experience was totally unplanned and extremely sacred and powerful. And I am quite sure that it reminded all of us of why we were there, including our congressperson, and why we would do what we did. And so I offered this because it reminded me of three things that I think might be useful as we think about faithful advocacy. One is that we really need each other and we need diversity in our communities. Two is that there are times to go off script, to let go of control, to not necessarily follow the rules. And three, I think this is a Quaker thing, Presbyterian, I don't know for sure, but the spirit really does move in community when we listen in powerful and profound ways. So that's the story I offer for us to keep in mind today.
Thank you so much, Diana, for sharing that beautiful story of way opening, as friends would say. Now I'm going to turn the conversation over to Charlie Turner from Virginia. Welcome, Charlie.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Peace be upon you. My name is Charlie Turner. I'm the executive director of the Virginia Muslim Civic League. We are a nonprofit that organizes and advocates on behalf of Muslims throughout Central Virginia, and I'm a member of the Muslim community in Richmond. And tonight I want to share with you about our community's journey. For the past 2 years, Muslims throughout the United States, have lived through a profound sense of crisis. Not only have they witnessed the staggering progression of genocide against the Palestinian people that weighs heavy upon our souls, but their pleas to elected officials to intervene have largely gone ignored. And instead, our communities here find themselves subjected to another surge of prejudice and persecution reminiscent of the height of the War on Terror. And as someone whose job it is to advocate for my community and to organize resistance against U.S. complicity in the genocide, I had to, by necessity, erect countless mental and emotional barriers under the guise of just doing the work. But I wanted to share with you tonight the first time that I wept from the realization of the magnitude of the atrocities that were being committed by my government, by my nation, and in my name. You see, I'm the father of 3 children. I have 2 boys, one's 7, and the other one is 2 years old, and a little girl that was just born 6 weeks ago. And so Miss Rachel is a staple in our household. One evening, a video popped up on my phone, Miss Rachel, and she had a special guest with her on her show. Her name was Rahaf. And Rahaf was from Gaza. And Rahaf was so excited to show Miss Rachel that she could dance on her new pair of prosthetic limbs. I refuse to live in a world where a little girl must learn to dance on prosthetic legs. And my faith demands that I do all in my power to prevent my children from inheriting a world which allows and even justifies such wickedness to happen. Instead, I take solace that I, just like all of you, draw from the wellspring of faith to inspire the work necessary to create a world where boys and girls can dance freely and inherit a world that cherishes and loves them. And I take heart knowing that we all do this work together. When we rise to do this work, I know that we follow in the footsteps of the prophets before us. When we rise to do this work, we become a blessing unto others. When we rise to do this work, we seek out a world where the weak are uplifted, the strangers are welcome, the hungry are fed, children laugh and play, and live free from fear and anxiety. We people of faith have a unique gift to offer unto others who find themselves paralyzed in an emotional maelstrom of weakness, despair, agony, and apathy. We people of faith provide hope, hope rooted in a faith that teaches that goodness will prevail. We give hope with the knowledge that God is the greatest of planners, and that no man or woman, corporation nor regime can devise a scheme so great that it overcomes the justice that God has promised. With hope, we give hope with the promise that we are not meant to suffer injustices in vain, but to use them to transform our spirits, fortify our hearts, and put our hands to the task of building a better world. And so I am so deeply honored to have been invited into this space with you. I am so honored that I've found this organization, the Friends Committee, which I just recently have come to know. To be in this space with such people of faith who refuse to live in a world where violence and hatred reign. And tonight I pray that God strengthen our resolve, that He plant our feet firm upon ground, and He use our hands to do His work in this world to benefit all of our brothers and sisters in humanity. Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you for your witness and your work with the FCNL community. Welcome. Last but not least, we of course need to hear from a Quaker, so please welcome Darlene McDonald from Utah.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for introducing me, and also it's great to see you, Bridget, and everyone else that's on the call. As you said, my name is Darlene McDonald. I serve as a on the board of directors for the American Friends Service Committee. I'm also a member at large for FCNL. I am a Quaker. I'm a member of the Salt Lake monthly meeting here in the great and beautiful state of Utah. I am guided by my faith. When we look at the things that are happening today, earlier in the call, Stephen as well as Charles talked about the things that are happening in our country right now, especially within the legislature. For me, it is very important to be guided by my faith in how I address and speak to and advocate for all of the issues that are happening in our country, from the war in Gaza, from healthcare, the government shutdown with members of the people who work for the government, military members, who are not getting paid right now. When Bridget came on, she had her Love Thy Neighbor poster, and that really speaks to my heart. When I talk about love thy neighbor and what we must do in this moment, love thy neighbor must be more than a slogan or a hashtag. It must be the guiding principles that we use in everything that we do. When we truly love thy neighbor, we don't want to see our neighbors going without food. We don't want to see our neighbors going without health care, going without a paycheck, going with being unsheltered. That is what love thy neighbor truly mean. And when I see that sign, it speaks to me on so many different levels. Not only am I guided by my faith, I am also guided by history. As I was preparing for this call, the one thing that really came to me was the Reverend Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. When you think about who he was addressing in that letter, he was addressing fellow clergy members and what must be done within the clergy to not just be complicit or just be complacent in what needs to happen now. It is not okay, as Charles was saying, it is not okay to ask people who are suffering now to wait. How long must they wait in order for justice to happen, to feel justice, to have justice? I am reminded that when we lean on our faith, and even the people who led the movement, the shoulders of the people we stand on right now, we're all faith leaders. But we don't have to wait for those faith leaders to appear before us. We can be the leaders that we desire to see within our community. If someone hasn't shown up in the way that you feel that they should show up, if your Dr. King hasn't shown up in your community, that is your calling to show up and be that faith leader, that faith advocate that is needed in your community. We don't need to wait. It is not okay to ask people who are suffering to wait for that justice to come. So when we look around us and we love thy neighbor in the truest sense of that phrase, we show up for them in our community. It's not just about showing up at rallies or anything like that. It is picking up the phone maybe and calling people within your community. It's knocking on people's door, knocking on your literal neighbor's door and saying, I am here for you. Letting your neighbors who may be immigrants know that you are welcomed and you are wanted and you are necessary and you are safe in this community. Letting your neighbors know and see you showing up and advocating for them. If you haven't read the letter from Birmingham jail, I highly recommend that you take the time to read it or reread it, because even though he was addressing members of the clergy in that letter, he was addressing all of us, past, present, and future. That letter is timeless. And it calls upon all of us in this moment to show up for our neighbors and let them know that we are here. So that is what I want to leave you with as a Quaker, seeing that of God in all of us, that we show up for everyone in our community, that they are loved and we are family. Love thy neighbor as if we are family.
Thank you, Darlene. And thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Diana. Your wisdom is so powerful, and the ways that you have shown up today in your communities and really helped us to see an example of 3 examples, actually, of ways that we can show up in our communities as well. It's very inspiring. So I will now turn it to Bridget to share a little bit more about what's happening here in DC and ways that you can take action together as part of this community.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And thank you so much to all of our speakers for sharing your stories. At FCNL, we know that sharing your stories is a gift. It is not always easy, but it is always powerful. And it really is how we can make change. So thank you for bringing all of yourselves and your stories to the call tonight and sharing them with us. It really was inspiring. So I just want to say a few words about what is happening right now in Washington related to the government shutdown in particular. The government shutdown, we know, is a serious impasse. It is really a failure of our government to meet the needs of the people and to do its basic functions. But there are people standing up. And I was inspired today, as I've been inspired tonight, by a vigil that we were part of with other faith partners and many members of Congress. I have never been to a vigil with so many members of Congress who showed up and not only shared about what we need to do to protect the health care of millions of people around this country, to uphold our democracy and core constitutional powers of Congress over the power of the purse, and to get the government reopened, but who shared about why they do what they do and stand for what they stand for in Congress. And that is from their own faith. They all shared their own personal stories of their faith and why it leads them to stand up for the vulnerable, to work for a world of greater justice, of greater peace, a world where we can all thrive and where the human dignity of every person is respected and upheld. And it was really inspiring to be part of that vigil. And those vigils are not going to stop. And the work together is not going to stop until we get the government reopened, until we protect healthcare for 22 million people who are at risk of radical rises in their costs and potentially losing care. And that ensures the administration spends the funds that Congress appropriates. So there's a lot of work going on to try to get to a resolution. And we hope that that comes quickly. Congress got us into this mess, and Congress can get us out of this mess. There are opportunities coming up that Congress can restore illegally rescinded funds in the coming days. This includes some of the foreign assistance funds that helps people all around the world. And Congress has the opportunity to support language to restore some of these what are called pocketed rescinded funds in a bipartisan deal, and we need them to do that. We need them to ensure that there are protections, there are guardrails against this authoritarian White House that is taking funds that were appropriated for Congress, so that we can ensure that what Congress appropriates is spent. And we need them to protect healthcare and to restore critical funding that has been ripped away from our communities and from around the world. What we know is that interfaith collective advocacy is very powerful. And in this moment for our country, which is a moment of moral reckoning, it is not just about policies and appropriations in Congress and bills that need to pass. It is about the kind of country we want to be. It is about upholding the vision and the promise of a democracy where everyone is free and equal, and where the rights of all and the dignity of all are upheld. All year, we have seen the White House and the majority in Congress focus on interests of the wealthy, billionaires, and corporations, while they've been gutting healthcare, food access, the core essential services that meet the needs of families and communities around the country. We're watching them pour billions still. They're not saving money for all of us and just doing good things with it. They're taking from the poor, giving to the rich, and giving more millions and millions and billions into militarizing our streets, disappearing our neighbors. And instead of negotiating an agreement and keeping the government open and securing healthcare, Congress has continued to choose to furlough hundreds of thousands of federal workers and disrupt programs for the most in need. We need Congress to get the government reopened. We know that the priorities of this White House are misled, but the priorities of the people are clear. This moment of moral reckoning calls us to love our neighbors without exception, as we have said, and to speak our truth to power. So we will be continuing to do this in solidarity with faith communities nationwide until the government reopens. We want to invite you to be part of Faithful Fridays. These will be an opportunity for us to join together and continue our advocacy. Lawmakers are paying attention, and our work makes a big difference. Members of Congress today at this vigil said, we need you all. We need the faith voices. We need the public pressure. We need you all around the country to continue speaking up. So for Faithful Fridays, this is a collective interfaith action call. We want you to take 5 minutes tomorrow, just 5 minutes. Call your senators and representatives, or write a letter if you prefer. If you're near an office, do a drop-in. Many of you have been so hard at work with this advocacy, and we are so grateful. We need to keep it up. So Faithful Fridays, please join us, and let's keep putting our faith into action. There is should be a link for you, fcnl.org/shutdown in the chat, and you can find out more information and what you can do to take action around the shutdown there. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the call, we had a very important vote happen last night about other congressional authorities that are critical for our vision of the world we seek. And I want to turn it over to Heather Brandon Smith, our Director for Foreign Policy, to talk about what happened and what we do next.
Thank you so much, Bridget. And hello, friends. Thank you for joining us tonight. So over the past month, the Trump administration has carried out at least 4 drone strikes on boats in the Caribbean Sea. They claim these boats are carrying drugs destined for the United States, and that this gives the administration the authority to kill all people on board, even if they have the ability to interdict the boat and arrest those suspected of drug trafficking. Let me be clear. These strikes are illegal and they are immoral. The administration is claiming we are in an armed conflict with drug cartels. Armed conflict is the technical term for war, and it unlocks extraordinary powers, including killing as a first resort and proportionate harm to civilians. Only Congress can declare war, and we are not at war with any groups or any nations in Latin America. There is a word for the premeditated killing of a criminal suspect. That word is murder, whether inside the United States or on the high seas. Drug trafficking is illegal, of course, and should be handled by law enforcement, with suspects receiving due process, not summary execution. The good news is Congress is responding. As Bridget mentioned, just last night, the Senate voted on a war powers resolution led by Senators Adam Schiff and Tim Kaine to stop the Trump administration's military strikes in the Caribbean Sea targeting alleged drug traffickers from Venezuelan-based gangs. While the vote failed, it was close at 51 to 48. Nearly all Democrats and 2 Republicans, Senators Rand Paul and Lisa Murkowski, supported the resolution. The only Democrat who voted against was Senator John Fetterman. But we were not sure if all Democrats would stick together on this vote, let alone if any Republicans would join. So to see that unity for accountability is a positive sign. So now there are 2 questions. What happens now, considering the administration is likely to continue these escalations? And what can constituent advocates do? We need to keep pushing our members of Congress to do their constitutional duty and hold the administration accountable. The Senate can vote again on another war powers resolution, and they need to hear from their constituents. If your senator voted in favor of the resolution, please thank them and tell them to keep speaking out. They need your support. If they opposed it, explain your disappointment and rally others in your community to contact them. On the House side, FCNL is supporting 2 war powers resolutions. You should ask your representative to co-sponsor and publicly support both of these. The first is House Concurrent Resolution 51, led by Representative Ilhan Omar. And the second is House Joint Resolution 126, led by Representative Jason Crow. Keeping America out of more wars is a cross-partisan issue, and I know there are Republicans who are privately very concerned about these strikes and about the escalation. We need to continue to make noise and engage our legislators. But you don't have to take my word for it. I am excited to share a short video from Representative Jason Crow explaining why this is important to him and why we cannot give up on working for peace and holding the Trump administration accountable. Thank you.
Hi folks, it's Congressman Jason Crow from Colorado. I'd like to start by thanking you all for the incredible work you do, including the folks at the Friends Committee on National Legislation for putting together this webinar. I know we find ourselves in very troubling times, and that makes the advocacy you do all that more important. I'm inspired by the way this community works to translate faith into tangible action and provide hope to so many. You are a force for good in this world, and your voices matter. Today, I'm asking you to speak out on an important issue. Across faiths and traditions, we share a moral truth that human life is sacred and that the use of force must be a last resort, not the first. Yet the Trump administration continues to rely heavily on military action, often without the authorization of Congress and without the consent of the people that we represent. Over the past 10 months, we've seen a troubling pattern: unauthorized airstrikes, baseless self-defense justifications, and operations conducted in the shadows of the law. Trump promised peace, but instead he's delivering more war and more conflict. When we fail to question it, when Congress stays silent, we fail in our duty to the men and women in uniform and to the civilians caught in the crossfire. This is something that I know deeply and personally from my own time in combat and in the military. The American people have made clear they have no appetite for endless war. Nobody wants to be dragged into these endless conflicts without oversight, without debate, without questioning. I went to war 3 times for this country in Iraq and Afghanistan, wars that cost thousands of lives, trillions of dollars, and decades of lost opportunity. We owe the American people a thorough debate and vote before we send our service members into harm's way. As people of faith, you understand that peace is not passive. It takes courage, conviction, and conscience. That's why I introduced Joint Resolution 126, which directs the President to end unauthorized hostilities. I'm proud to lead this joint resolution in the House and glad to work with Senators Kaine and Schiff, who are leading this effort in the Senate. I encourage you all to pick up your phones, call your members of Congress, and make your voice heard on House Joint Resolution 126. For too long, Congress has let presidents of both parties engage in unauthorized, unaccountable war. We cannot stand by and let this president do the same or worse. Thank you again for your support and your hard work.
Wow, thank you to Congressman Crow from Colorado, and thank you to Heather for that update. As we heard, it was a very quick vote last night, and it came quickly. And I want to thank those on this call and those who are not on this call who jumped into action. When we sent out an action alert at 10 a.m. yesterday, we didn't know the exact timing of the vote, but we just said you need to call your senators now, and folks jumped in. More than 400 calls to Senate offices in less than 12 hours before the vote. And we know, as Heather said, there is more work to be done. This is not over. So stay tuned. You can check out updates on FCNL's website. And I see Heather has put in the chat for folks the links to the bill text, as we know some really want to get in the weeds. You can always visit FCNL's website for blog posts, resources, and actions on both of the issues that we're talking about this evening. As Bridget said earlier, people who care about peace and justice are being pulled in many directions right now. If your email inbox, your social calendar, your work calendar is anything like mine, you have to take and make tough decisions, where to put your time, your energy, your resources. It's really easy to be stretched thin, wanting to do so much good. The first thing I want to share with you all is a new action resource on FCNL's website that we hope can help with some of this decision making when you are trying to take action. We know that sometimes you only have a few minutes, and when that happens, you might not know where to go to try and take action. So on FCNL's website at fcnl.org/weekly, we have a easy to use page where if you have a few minutes, you can write Congress and get to our most recent action alerts. You can call Congress and pick up the phone and make calls on the issues that matter to you. We have a few other actions that are here ready to go. We also have put together for our shutdown related work a landing page, fcnl.org/shutdown. We put in the chat, Bridget mentioned it earlier, making it again very easy for you to get the talking points you need that we've been emphasizing, ability to easily write your members of Congress, call your members of Congress, and we hope if you have the time and you're near a local office of your members, you print off our legislative ask sheet that has this information that you can bring into those offices. We've already seen folks since we launched this page last week jump in and visit their members' offices. The more that we can drum up support, it just leads to more action. The second thing that we want to share with folks this evening is how we can work together in our congregations, in our community groups, our advocacy groups, whatever you're active with. As we heard earlier, there's power in numbers, and I really appreciate the speakers that we had before us this evening. Whether it's a faith-based group or one based on shared interests, hobbies, parenting group, maybe a book club, or experiences that bring people together. Leaning on each other in a moment like this is important for comfort and building confidence and shared experience, but it's also a powerful advocacy tool and something that can be leveraged in a moment like this. So let's talk about a few actions that you can organize with whatever group you have and in your community. These are certainly not all of the actions that people can engage in. One thing that FCNL I think encourages is being creative in this time. Being creative to draw attention to an issue is really important. So this is not an exhaustive list, but we of course want to encourage people to gather as groups and go lobby their members of Congress in person if you're able. But Congress and staffers are certainly still doing virtual meetings, and you can reach out to them. We have resources on our website that we will link to and include in our follow-up email. But I want to also encourage folks, especially those with faith communities. We've seen an uptick in meetings and churches and people of faith reaching out to us saying, we want to do a letter writing event. We know it's important. We've heard that physical letters are making an impact. So one thing you can do is use FCNL's resources, whether it's our actions, our leave behinds, our legislative asks, to create your own templates. And always make sure you're personalizing them from your own experience, as well as localizing them. With this government shutdown, something in one community might be different in another community, but your members of Congress are paying attention to what's happening locally, so always personalize. And one level up thing you can do, if you're able, is deliver those letters in person to the legislator's local office. And if you're not near a local office, you can package them together and send them in the mail. Getting those little batches of letters is a really powerful way to show it's not just you dropping something off. It's you, it's 3 other people, it's 10 other people, it's 50 other people. Bringing those together in numbers can be a really powerful tool in this moment. Now, another thing you can do that we've had some success with and worked with folks on is bringing together a sign-on letter. And that could be similar to a petition, but it's you as a group agreeing to that letter text, something that you want to make clear to your legislator. And getting members of your congregation or your group to sign their name, give probably their address to make sure that they can be named as constituents. And this is where you, again, want to be a little creative. If you can't gather in person, find out and figure out a way to gather those names. That could be on a Google form. It could be by just emailing. It's been really wonderful to see listservs light up over the last few months and people really jumping in and sharing information and saying, yes, sign my name to this, sign my name to that. So collecting those names, and if you cannot deliver to a local office, you can simply send that letter and those list of names to the appropriate Hill staffer. On FCNL's Action Center at fcnl.org/Congress, we have staffer information, so you can find the right staffer to send it to based on the issue you all are focusing on. Lastly, we have seen, as I said here a moment ago,
people are jumping into action and making phone calls. I've been pleasantly surprised to see that people are still continuing to get through and actually talking to staffers. That may not apply every time you call, but it's really great to see that people are still getting through and not just always having to do voicemails. But one way you can really make an impact is organize a call-in day. So I would suggest not a weekend. You want to do this when the offices are open, but use maybe a time after church or time after meeting or after a planning session to decide on a specific day of the week that you want to have several members of your group call the same office and encourage them to sign on to that bill, make that public statement, vote this way. Stagger the calls or try and have people sign up for specific time slots. The more that you can organize this and you can have a drumbeat of calls coming in throughout the day, will get the attention of these staffers. They do tally these. We've had some really wonderful moments where former FCNL staff and interns and program assistants who are now on the Hill report back to us. You know, sometimes I'm skeptical that they don't tally those calls. Well, guess what? I'm tallying calls now. So please think about ways that you can organize these call-in days and really make an impact in a short amount of time. One other tip here is to choose the same ask. You don't have to use the same exact language. You always want to personalize, but you want to make sure you're talking about the same bill, or you're talking about the same issue, or you're talking about the same vote, so that when they're doing those tallies, they really get the sense of the power that people are bringing to this issue. Now, here we go. When considering some of these group actions, one size might not fit all. Research your specific legislator that you're trying to influence, and sometimes there's a big difference between the Senate and the House. Some actions might be more effective for one legislator versus another. They might respond differently to a call-in day versus a in-person drop-off, for example. Are there potential partners, community, or faith leaders whom the legislator may respond more positively towards? Invite those people to act with you. We heard some great stories earlier about acting in an interfaith way. And this doesn't have to just be an interfaith effort. There's been really wonderful work through the FCNL Grassroots Network, especially our advocacy teams around the country, who are partnering and doing lobbying and actions with faith groups, with local community groups, civic groups, and small businesses as well. How quickly are you trying to act? Something like yesterday's example with the War Powers vote is you don't have a lot of time to organize. So you have to jump into action quickly. But other times you might have a couple days, a couple weeks, maybe you have a month or two. So factor into your planning that, well, not always the case. Some of the most impactful actions take more time to organize, coordinate, and carry out. Bridget mentioned earlier about appearing at an interfaith vigil. Those things sometimes come together quickly, but oftentimes they take a little bit of work, a week or two, to really make sure you have speakers in place, you have media present, and you have everyone ready to go. So really think about the time that you have. And lastly, is this a one-off action you're trying to do, or can this be something more sustained? Is this something you can build over time? Is it something around an anniversary or a specific date that means something to you, your group, or the issue that you're advocating for? So just a few considerations here, not the only ones, of course, but you're always, when you're planning these group activities, use the power of that group, use that brain power to make sure you're really thinking through how you can use your time, energy, and resources to be as effective as possible. Now, each of these actions that we just talked about, as well as others, are on our weekly witness page. They provide flexible yet impactful options for you and others to consider. We hope you'll jump into action on the 2 issues we've discussed tonight, but we know there are so many more. But I think there are probably some other folks on here on this call that are thinking, what if I don't have a group? What can I do on my own? And the first thing I want to make clear to you is your voice is important. It matters. It's okay if you don't have a group. You should make your voice heard in the way that works best for you, and use our resources, as well as contacting us at lobby@fcnl.org for support. But I also want to encourage you to come to one of our trainings. We have monthly trainings, which you can find at fcnl.org/intro to advocacy, where we train and introduce you to potential pathways to meeting up with groups as well. And if you're wanting to connect with a group and others in your community, or you have maybe a couple people that don't know exactly what to do and want to get started, we have some options. So I hope you'll consider starting or joining an FCNL advocacy team, for example. Advocacy teams just celebrated 10 years of lobbying and media work and organizing in their communities, and they're in all 50 states. They're organizing, building connections, and lobbying for a peaceful and just world. This year, they've been working on a just Middle East policy, working for aid, not arms. And there is really, really wonderful work happening at the local level, building these relationships and taking action. So I'm going to share in a moment a short video that I think gives a even better pitch about advocacy teams than I can give, because it comes from some of our staff who have put a lot of thought, time, and energy into how you can be a more effective advocate as a group.
For more than 80 years, the Friends Committee on National Legislation has been a powerful, nonpartisan, and faith-based voice for peace and justice.
In 2015, FCNL made a shift to put the tools and resources into the hands of constituents across the country. That effort led to the development of a 50-statewide network.
Having an office here on Capitol Hill gives FCNL an important voice, but we know that real change is driven by ordinary people like you and me around the country.
That's why FCNL supports a network of over 135 grassroots advocacy teams in all 50 states and the District of Columbia.
We were able to just really have a deep dive to what it really means to be in an advocacy team, specifically here in San Diego, where we haven't had one for such a long time. Everyone was super energized. We were able to get to know each other and also do a deep dive into the campaign to support Gaza.
Advocacy teams members develop long-term relationships with members of Congress and their staff, publish in the media, and hold events to educate their communities about issues of peace and justice. The Advocacy Teams program is built around the most effective way to change your member of Congress's position on an issue, having a sit-down meeting, either in person or virtually.
All of your hard work fighting and advocating and communicating your issues with members of Congress, members of the Senate, people here in the federal government, I can tell you has been truly appreciated by all of us. What I can tell you from a personal note, especially the friends in Santa Cruz, the work that you've done to communicate with me on your issues has made me a better representative.
Advocacy team members come from a variety of backgrounds and faith traditions. We are all united by Quaker principles of deep listening, finding common ground, and looking for the light of God in everyone.
Teams gather for a monthly national call to hear from a high-profile guest speaker, hear policy updates from FCNL staff, and be inspired by stories from advocacy teams around the country.
FCNL staff and volunteer leaders around the country provide support to teams as they advocate.
Advocacy teams work on one legislative issue each year because when we all work together in a coordinated fashion, we are more effective. In addition to this main campaign, advocacy teams work on other issues that they're also passionate about.
When we started the advocacy team here in West Virginia 8 years ago in the Eastern Panhandle, we had a newly elected member of Congress who had actually come from out of state and was a strong, moderate GOP representative. I called him, had a direct conversation about our legislative act, which was to eliminate unfunded priorities from the Pentagon budget. I said, I think your congressman has a constitutional and fiscal orientation that puts him in line with us, even though he doesn't often agree with us. He's the first Republican co-sponsor for removing unfunded priorities from the Pentagon budget.
Your commitment to peace, justice, and dialogue has had a lasting impact on the way individuals understand complex issues, including how I thought about U.S. foreign policy, especially during my effort to repeal the Iraq War AUMF. Your teams come prepared, grounded in values, and always respectful. Working with FCNL has reminded me that persistent, principled civic engagement can truly shape policy, and it has made a lasting impact on me.
And best of all, the Advocacy Teams program works. Let me give you an example. In 2022, the Advocacy Teams had a profound impact on the debate around a Yemen War Powers resolution. After meeting with Advocacy Teams, 39 new co-sponsors signed on in the House, and 12 new Senate co-sponsors also signed on. And this provided needed pressure to help bring the parties to the table to negotiate a ceasefire. In just 10 years, FCNL has built a 50-state network that advocates for peace and justice. You don't have to feel alone in this work. Visit fcnl.org/teams to join a local team or start your own. We're excited to support you.
As my wonderful colleague Tim said there right at the end, if you are ready to learn and get connected, visit fcnl.org/teams. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm going to turn it back over to Bridget.
Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you for all those ways that we can put our faith into action. And thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. I know there's so much happening in your lives, and we are grateful that you are here with us. I hope you feel informed, equipped, and inspired. You will receive an email tomorrow with links to the recording and some of the opportunities to take action that we talked about. There have been some questions we've received, and we will be sending out all the information and links. So please consider how you can take meaningful action with us in the days and weeks ahead. This is how we keep hope alive. We take action. We put our faith into practice. And I want to emphasize particularly how important it is that we are continuing to engage with members of Congress about the responsibility of reopening the government, protecting our democracy, protecting healthcare. So please do visit fcnl.org/shutdown and take action there. I also know that there are many of you who have been with FCNL for a long time, as well as newcomers, and you are all so welcome to be here. We are grateful to be building this beloved community together. Please keep advocating and educating, organizing, and donating. We have to sustain one another, and we need your help sustaining this work and sustaining FCNL's efforts as a community. So some of you already are sustaining donors. Monthly sustainers is what we call them. I am one. And we thank you. We are grateful. If you're not yet, please consider joining us as a monthly sustainer to help us keep this work going. And you can find out information and join us at fcnl.org/sustain. So I hope that you will consider all the different ways that you can continue to support this work together. We will continue to do this with you. We will continue to offer information and education and inspiration to each other. I was inspired tonight by the words courage, conviction, and conscience. I think those speak so clearly to the call that we hear at FCNL to put our faith into action. We are so grateful for you all being here, and we will keep this work going together. Thank you, friends. Have a good evening. Be well. Keep taking care of one another.
Thank you, Bridget. And I hate to jump in with a wonderful closing, but it's for a good reason. I'm going to bring back Heather Brandon Smith with us. Heather, what news do you have to share?
I have the news that tonight the Senate voted to include in the annual military policy bill, the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, an amendment from Senators Tim Kaine and Todd Young to repeal the 2002 Iraq War Authorization. This is huge news. And one of the things that makes it so big is that it has already been included in the House version of the NDAA. So it is so close to being signed into law, and we are so close to finally repealing these decades-old war authorizations that are not needed. The wars are over, but they have been abused by presidential administrations, and we are going to take them off the books. So super excited to share that news with you. I know lots of folks have advocated on this over the many years, and I think it just goes to show that this approach of sustained, persistent engagement works. So thank you. Really thrilled to share that.
Thank you, Heather. It's not always when we can share positive breaking news live. So we really appreciate you doing that. And Bridget, I thank you for a wonderful closing. Friends, I hope this evening gave you something to take away and put into action. And I hope that you keep an eye out for your email tomorrow and take action as we move forward. Have a wonderful evening, and we will talk again real soon. Thank you, friends. Good night.